Welcome to Boring History for Sleep. In this video, we embark on a calm journey toward one of history's most enigmatic mysteries. The Anunnaki, those ancient beings spoken of in the earliest written words of human civilization. Long before empires rose and fell, before the great pyramids touched the sky, the people of Mesopotamia carved stories into wet clay. Stories of beings who descended from the heavens, who walked among mortals, who shaped the very foundations of human society. These were the Anunnaki. Relax, close your eyes, and let us drift into the story of a time when gods and humans shared the same earth, when the boundaries between sky and ground seemed less certain, and when every sunrise brought with it the possibility of divine encounter. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and share in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's begin. The sun rises slowly over the flat horizon of southern Mesopotamia. The year is approximately 3,800 before the Common Era. The land between two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates, stretches endlessly in shades of brown and green. Palm trees sway gently in the morning breeze. The air is already warm, carrying with it the scent of river water and wet earth. You are standing at the edge of a small settlement. Mud brick houses cluster together, their walls still cool from the night. Smoke rises from a few early cooking fires, thin columns that dissipate into the pale sky. In the distance, you can see the glimmer of canal water, carefully maintained channels that bring life to fields of barley and wheat. This is Eridu. The people who live here believe it to be the first city ever created, the place where civilization itself began. They speak of it with reverence, as though the very ground beneath your feet holds sacred memory. A woman emerges from one of the houses. She carries a clay vessel on her hip, moving with the practiced ease of someone who has made this journey countless times. She walks toward the canal, her feet leaving soft impressions in the dust. You follow at a distance, observing the rhythm of morning in this ancient place. The water in the canal moves slowly, reflecting the brightening sky. The woman kneels, dips her vessel, and fills it with practiced efficiency. As she works, she hums softly to herself. The melody is simple, repetitive, calming. It is a song her mother taught her and her mother's mother before that. The words, when she sings them, speak of Enki, the god of fresh water and wisdom, who dwells in the Abzu, the cosmic ocean beneath the earth. Enki is one of the Anunnaki, the great gods who came from Man, from heaven, the ones who decided the fates. The woman does not question this. It is simply the truth of the world, as certain as the sun's rising, as reliable as the flooding of the rivers. She returns to her home, and you wander further into the settlement. More people are emerging now. Men gather tools for the day's work in the fields. Children chase each other between houses, their laughter bright and sharp in the morning air. An old man sits in a doorway, working a piece of flint with patient, careful strikes, shaping it into a blade. Near the center of the settlement stands a structure different from the others. It is larger, built on a raised platform of packed earth and brick. The walls are thicker, more carefully constructed. This is the temple, the house of the god. Even from outside, you can sense its importance. People approach it with a certain careful respect, their voices lowering as they pass. A priest emerges from the temple entrance. He is dressed in a simple robe of white linen, wrapped and tied in the traditional manner. His head is shaved, his face solemn. He carries a small clay tablet in his hands, holding it as though it contains something precious. The priest walks to a shaded area beside the temple and sits on a low bench. He places the tablet on his lap and produces a reed stylus from within his robe. He examines the surface of the clay, still slightly damp, still receptive to marking. Then, with careful deliberation, he begins to press the stylus into the clay. The marks he makes are not pictures, though they began that way generations ago. They are wedge-shaped impressions, combinations of lines and angles that represent sounds and words. This is cuneiform, one of humanity's first writing systems. And what the priest records is not merely an account of grain stored or workers paid, though such tablets exist in abundance. What he records is something far older, far more significant. He writes of the time before time, of when the Anunnaki walked openly upon the earth. When Anu ruled the heavens, Enlil commanded the air and earth, and Enki governed the waters below. He writes of the assembly of the gods, of their councils and decisions, of the tasks they assigned to lesser divine beings, the Igigi, who labored on their behalf. The priest pauses, staring into the distance, as though listening to voices only he can hear. Then he continues writing. His stylus moves steadily, creating line after line of text. The morning grows warmer. Sweat beads on his forehead, but he does not stop. The story he records tells of a time when the Igigi, burdened by endless toil, rebelled. They refused to continue digging canals, maintaining rivers, building the infrastructure of the divine world. They cast down their tools and confronted the great Anunnaki, demanding relief from their suffering. The Anunnaki Council gathered to address this crisis. Enlil, stern and powerful, was angered by the rebellion and considered punishment. But Enki, wise and cunning, proposed a different solution. Why not create a new being? One designed specifically for labor, one who could take on the work the Igigi refused to do. And so humanity was created, fashioned from clay and the blood of a slain god, given shape and breath by divine hands. Created not as equals to the gods, but as servants, as workers, as the solution to a celestial labor dispute. The priest finishes this section of the text and sets down his stylus. He lifts the tablet carefully and carries it into the temple, where it will be dried and fired, hardened into permanence. The story will endure, passed down through generations, copied and recopied by scribes yet unborn. You remain outside, contemplating what you have just witnessed. The idea that humanity was created to serve the gods is woven into the very fabric of this society. It explains the temples, the offerings, the endless cycle of work and worship. If humans were made for this purpose, then fulfilling that purpose is not merely duty, but the very reason for existence. The day continues its slow progression. The sun climbs higher. Workers move through the fields, tending crops with the same patient attention the priest gave to his tablet. Everything here moves with deliberate calm. There is no rush, no urgency. Time feels different in this ancient place, stretched and elastic. You walk beyond the settlement, following a path that leads along one of the irrigation canals. The water flows steadily, a soft murmuring sound that blends with the rustling of reeds growing along the banks. Fish dart beneath the surface. Silver flashes in the brown water. In the distance, another settlement is visible, and beyond that, another. The land between the rivers is dotted with these communities, each centered around its temple, each devoted to its particular deity. Some worship Inanna, goddess of love and war. Others honor Nana, the moon god. Still others give their devotion to Utu, god of the sun and justice. All of these deities are Anunnaki. All are part of the great divine family that governs the cosmos. They are not distant, abstract concepts. To the people of Sumer, they are real, present, active forces in the world. When a storm destroys crops, it is because Ishkur, god of storms, willed it. When a woman gives birth successfully, it is because Nintu, the birth goddess, favored her. When a king triumphs in battle, it is because he carries the blessing of the Anunnaki. The afternoon heat becomes intense. You seek shade beneath a cluster of date palms and sit, watching the landscape shimmer in the warmth. A farmer passes by, leading a donkey laden with bundles of reeds. He nods to you in greeting but does not stop. His face is weathered, marked by years of sun and wind. His hands are calloused, strong. He is perhaps 40 years old, ancient by the standards of this time. As evening approaches, the quality of light changes. The harsh brightness softens into gold and amber. Shadows lengthen. The temperature begins to drop, bringing relief from the day's heat. You return to Eridu, drawn by the sound of voices raised in song. A group has gathered near the temple. They are singing a hymn, praising Enki, asking for his continued blessing on their city, their water, their lives. The melody is different from the morning's quiet tune. This is communal, rhythmic, designed to be sung by many voices together. The words speak of Enki's wisdom, his generosity, his role as creator and protector. Among the singers, you notice the priest from earlier. His eyes are closed, his voice blending with the others. There is an expression of peace on his face, a sense of connection to something greater than himself. This is not merely ritual. This is relationship, communication, a bridge between the human and divine worlds. The hymn ends. The group disperses slowly, individuals and families returning to their homes. Cooking fires are lit. The smell of roasting fish and baked bread fills the air. Children are called inside. Doors are closed against the coming night. You find yourself alone in the gathering darkness. Above, stars are beginning to appear, sharp and clear in the unpolluted sky. The Mesopotamians watch these stars carefully, mapping their movements, attributing meaning to their patterns. The stars, too, are governed by the Anunnaki. Anu himself dwells in the highest heaven, among the circumpolar stars that never set. A cool breeze rises from the direction of the marshes to the south. It carries the scent of water and growing things, the smell of the earth itself. You stand in the center of this ancient city, surrounded by the remnants of the day's activities, and you feel the weight of time pressing down. This moment, this place, is the foundation of so much that will come after. Writing, cities, organized religion, complex society. All of it beginning here in the mud and clay of southern Mesopotamia. The people sleeping in these houses believe they are not alone in the universe. They believe they were created by beings more powerful, more knowledgeable, more enduring than themselves. They believe these beings still watch, still influence, still care about the outcomes of human affairs. This belief shapes everything they do, every choice they make, every structure they build. In the morning, more tablets will be written, more stories will be carved into clay. The tale of the Anunnaki will grow richer, more detailed, more elaborate. Scribes will develop complex genealogies, tracking the relationships between gods. They will assign each deity specific responsibilities, specific powers, specific sacred numbers and symbols. They will build a mythology as intricate and organized as the irrigation systems that sustain their crops. But that is tomorrow's work. Tonight, the city rests. The only sounds are the distant call of night birds, the soft movement of wind through palm fronds, the occasional bark of a dog. The stars wheel slowly overhead, marking the passage of hours that humans can only roughly measure. You settle into the stillness, allowing the peace of this ancient night to wash over you. There is something profound about this quiet, this darkness unbroken by artificial light. It is the same darkness that covered the earth in the very beginning, before Anu and his children brought order to chaos, before the Anunnaki decided the fates. Sleep comes easily in this place, in this time. The worries of distant futures have no power here. There is only the present moment, the cool night, the soft earth, and the stories written in clay, waiting to be discovered thousands of years hence by people who will struggle to understand, to interpret, to make sense of what the ancient Sumerians knew with such certainty. The Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, the great gods of the ancient world, whose names and deeds were preserved in the very first writings of human civilization. Their story is beginning slowly, carefully, in the minds and hands of priests and scribes, who could never imagine how far their words would travel, how long their tablets would endure, or how many future generations would puzzle over the meaning of beings who descended from the sky to shape the destiny of humankind. The night deepens around ancient Eridu. Stars multiply across the vast darkness, more visible with each passing moment as your eyes adjust. The Milky Way stretches overhead like a luminous river, and you understand why the people here speak of celestial waters, of the heavenly ocean that mirrors the earthly Abzu below. Everything is connected, above and below, heaven and earth, gods and mortals. Morning arrives with the same gentle insistence as yesterday. The sky lightens gradually from black to deep blue to pale gray. Birds begin their dawn chorus. The settlement stirs slowly to life. But today, you will venture deeper into the mysteries, into the temple itself, into the heart of where the divine and human worlds intersect. The priest you observed yesterday emerges early from the temple complex. He performs a ritual washing at a stone basin filled with water from the sacred canal. He pours the water over his hands 3 times, murmuring prayers with each pouring. Purification is essential before approaching the divine presence. Even priests, who serve the gods daily, must cleanse themselves of the mundane world before entering sacred space. You follow him as he returns inside. The temple interior is dimmer than outside, lit only by small oil lamps placed in niches along the walls. The flames flicker, casting moving shadows that make the walls seem alive. The air smells of incense, a resinous scent that has been burning since the previous evening. It mingles with the earthen smell of mud brick and the faint aroma of offerings, bread and dates, and beer left for the god. At the far end of the main chamber stands the cult statue. It is perhaps 3 feet tall, carved from wood and adorned with precious materials. Lapis lazuli from distant Afghanistan forms the eyes, giving the statue an unsettling, watchful appearance. Gold leaf covers portions of the face and hands. The figure is dressed in elaborate robes of woven fabric, changed regularly by the priests. This is not merely a representation of Enki. To the people of Eridu, this is Enki, or at least the physical vessel through which the god can manifest and receive worship. The priest approaches the statue with measured steps. He bows deeply, then begins the morning ritual. First, he removes yesterday's offerings, carrying away the stale bread and lukewarm beer. These will not be discarded carelessly, but will be consumed by the temple staff. What has been offered to the god retains a portion of divine blessing. Then he brings fresh offerings, placing them on the altar with reverent care. Fresh bread, still warm from the ovens, dates glistening with natural sugar, beer in a finely made clay cup, a portion of fish grilled and seasoned. As he works, he speaks, not prayers exactly, but conversation. He tells Enki about the settlement's needs, a canal that requires maintenance, a dispute between 2 families over water rights, a woman who is pregnant and asks for safe delivery. The priest's voice is low, intimate, as though speaking to a respected elder who genuinely cares about these small human concerns. This is the nature of the relationship between the Anunnaki and humanity in Sumerian understanding. The gods are powerful, yes, immortal and commanding, but they are not distant or indifferent. They eat, drink, feel emotions, form relationships, experience anger and joy and jealousy. They are in many ways like humans, only vastly more powerful and enduring. After completing the morning ritual, the priest moves to an adjacent chamber. This room serves as the temple's library and scribal school. Clay tablets are stored here on wooden shelves, organized by category. Some contain administrative records, tracking the temple's considerable wealth in grain, livestock, and trade goods. Others hold literary texts, hymns, prayers, incantations, and still others preserve the mythological traditions, the sacred stories that explain how the world came to be and how it functions. The priest selects one of these mythological tablets. It is old, copied from an even older source. The clay is dark with age, the cuneiform impressions worn, but still legible. He carries it to a bench near a window where morning light streams in, and he begins to read, his lips moving silently as he traces the ancient words. The text he reads is the story of creation, one version among several that exist in Mesopotamian tradition. It speaks of a time before time, when only the primordial waters existed. Apsu, the fresh water, male and motionless. Tiamat, the salt water, female and chaotic. Between them, nothing. No sky, no earth, no gods, no humans, only potential. From the mingling of these waters, the first gods emerged, Lahmu and Lahamu, whose names mean silt and mud. Then Anshar and Kishar, representing the horizons of sky and earth, and from them Anu, the sky god, supreme among the Anunnaki. Generation after generation, the divine family grew, each new generation more defined, more powerful, more purposeful than the last. But this creation brought conflict. The younger gods were noisy, active, disturbing the peace that Apsu preferred. He resolved to destroy them, to return to the silence of the beginning. But Enki, wise even among gods, learned of the plan and acted first. He cast a spell of sleep upon Apsu, and then killed him, establishing his own dwelling in the depths where Apsu once ruled. This is the Abzu, the cosmic ocean of fresh water beneath the earth, from which all springs and rivers ultimately flow. Tiamat, enraged by her consort's death, prepared for war. She created an army of monsters, fearsome beings of chaos and destruction. She elevated one of her offspring, Kingu, to leadership and gave him the Tablet of Destinies, the divine object that grants the power to decree fates. The younger Anunnaki were terrified. None dared face Tiamat in battle, until Marduk stepped forward. He was young, strong, brilliant, the son of Enki. He agreed to fight Tiamat, but only if the other gods would acknowledge him as king, as supreme ruler of heaven and earth. The assembly of the Anunnaki met and debated. They had little choice. They granted Marduk the authority he demanded, investing him with divine weapons and powers. He went forth to battle, armed with bow and arrow, net and club, and the four winds as his allies. The confrontation was terrible and spectacular. Marduk caught Tiamat in his net. He sent the winds into her mouth so she could not close it. Then he shot an arrow through her open mouth into her heart, killing the chaos dragon. He split her corpse in two, using half to create the sky and half to create the earth. From her eyes he made the Tigris and Euphrates flow. From her tail he formed the Milky Way. Order was imposed on chaos. The cosmos took shape. Marduk then turned to Kingu and seized the Tablet of Destinies, claiming legitimate rulership. And when the question arose of who would do the work of maintaining this newly ordered universe, Kingu was slain. From his blood, mixed with clay, Enki created humanity. Beings designed specifically for labor, to free the gods from toil, allowing them to rest and be properly worshipped. The priest finishes reading this section and sits in contemplation. The story explains so much. Why humans must work. It is their fundamental nature and purpose. Why the gods deserve worship and offerings. They created and maintain the world. Why order must constantly be defended against chaos. The threat of Tiamat's return is never entirely vanquished. Why Marduk, though younger than Anu and Enlil, holds a position of such importance, he earned it through cosmic combat. You leave the priest to his meditation and wander through other parts of the temple complex. In a courtyard, young scribes are receiving instruction. They sit cross-legged on mats, each with a lump of clay before them and a stylus in hand. An older scribe, the master teacher, demonstrates the proper formation of signs. Learning cuneiform is arduous. There are hundreds of signs to memorize, each capable of representing sounds, words, or concepts, depending on context. Students begin with simple signs and syllables, practicing the same marks over and over until muscle memory takes hold. They copy out word lists, endless vocabularies of trees, birds, fish, manufactured objects, parts of the body, occupations, deities. Only after years of practice will they progress to literary texts. The myths and hymns, written in elevated language, using rare words and complex grammatical structures. These texts are not meant for casual reading. They are sacred literature, preserved and transmitted by a learned elite who guard not just knowledge, but the very relationship between heaven and earth. One young student struggles with a particularly complex sign. His stylus slips, marring the clay. He grimaces in frustration. The master teacher approaches, kneels beside him, takes the boy's hand in his own, and guides him through the proper motion. The stylus must be held at precisely the right angle. The pressure must be firm, but not excessive. Each wedge must be crisp and clear. The boy tries again, and this time succeeds. A smile breaks across his face. The master teacher nods approval and moves on to check another student's work. This is how the tradition continues, hand to hand, generation to generation. The stories of the Anunnaki, preserved not through memory alone, but through the permanence of fired clay. As midday approaches, you leave the temple and walk through the streets of Eridu. The settlement is fully awake now, bustling with activity. A potter works at his wheel, shaping vessels with practiced ease. His hands are caked with clay, his arms strong from years of labor. Finished pots sit drying in the sun, waiting to be fired. Some are simple and utilitarian, meant for storage or cooking. Others are decorated with geometric patterns or stylized representations of plants and animals. A weaver sits in the shade of her doorway, working at a vertical loom. The threads are made from flax, laboriously processed from plant to fiber to thread. Her fingers move rapidly, passing the shuttle back and forth, building up the fabric row by row. The cloth she creates will be used for garments, for temple hangings, for trade goods sent to distant cities. A metal worker tends a small furnace, heating copper to its melting point. He will pour the molten metal into clay molds, creating tools and weapons and decorative objects. The technology is relatively new, transforming what is possible in human society. Bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, is even more valuable, but tin must be imported from far away, making bronze objects rare and precious. All of this economic activity is coordinated and, to a large degree, controlled by the temple. The temple owns vast tracts of agricultural land. It employs farmers, herders, fishermen, craftspeople, and laborers. It collects tithes and offerings from the populace. It redistributes resources, ensuring that everyone has enough to survive, while accumulating surpluses that can be traded for materials not available locally. This system works because of the belief structure that underlies it. The land belongs to the gods. The temple is the god's household. The priests are the god's servants, managing divine property on behalf of the divine owner. To give offerings to the temple is not taxation in the modern sense, but rent and tribute ode to one's landlord, who happens to be an immortal being of immense power. You pass by the city wall, a structure of mud brick, perhaps 10 feet high, built to protect against both human raiders and flood waters. Guards stand watch, armed with copper-tipped spears and leather shields. They are not professional soldiers in the later sense, but citizens performing their duty to the community. They watch the horizon, looking for signs of trouble, but the day remains peaceful. Beyond the wall, farmers work in the fields. They guide wooden plows pulled by oxen, turning the soil in preparation for planting. The plow is a revolutionary tool, allowing one person and animal to do the work that previously required several people with digging sticks. It is another innovation transforming human society, enabling larger populations, greater surpluses, more complex social organization. A canal runs beside the field, part of the intricate irrigation system that makes agriculture possible in this arid land. Without the canals, none of this would exist. The rivers flood unpredictably, often at the wrong times. The natural rainfall is insufficient for reliable crops. Only through careful water management can the land support civilization. And who taught humans how to dig canals, how to manage water, how to practice irrigation agriculture? The myths are clear. Enki, lord of the Apsu, god of wisdom and fresh water, gave these gifts to humanity, along with writing, law, music, architecture, and all the other arts of civilization. These were not human inventions, but divine revelations, skills, and knowledge passed down from the Anunnaki to their human servants. The afternoon grows hot again, and you seek shelter from the sun. You find a place in the shade of a granary, a large structure where harvested barley is stored. The air here smells of dry grain, earthy and slightly sweet. Inside the granary, the barley is piled high, a treasury of food that will sustain the community through the coming year. An old woman sits nearby, grinding grain on a saddle quern. She places a handful of barley on the flat stone and uses a smaller stone to crush and grind it, reducing the grains to flour through repeated motion. Her arms are thin but still strong from decades of this work. She sings softly as she works, a song about Ninhursag, the mother goddess, who blesses the fields and the flocks. Ninhursag is another of the great Anunnaki. She is the mother of all living things, the goddess of birth and fertility. In some myths, she helps Enki create humans, shaping them from clay like a potter shapes vessels. In others, she gives birth to vegetation, to the plants that feed both gods and mortals. She is honored in every home where a child is born, invoked by every woman in labor. The old woman notices you watching and smiles. Her teeth are worn down, damaged by a lifetime of eating bread, contaminated with stone grit from the grinding process. But her eyes are kind. She gestures for you to sit beside her, and though no words are exchanged, there is communication in the gesture, a recognition of shared humanity. She returns to her work, and you sit in companionable silence, listening to the rhythmic sound of stone on stone, the soft rasp of grain being crushed. This is the foundation of civilization, Not the temples or the writing or the grand mythological narratives, but this simple, essential work, turning grain into flour, flour into bread, bread into life, sustained for another day. As evening approaches once again, the city prepares for night. Workers return from the fields, their tools shouldered, their bodies tired. Children are gathered from their play. Animals are penned. Doors are secured. And in the temple, the priest prepares for the evening ritual, when Enki must be fed again, given drink again, assured that he is honored and remembered. The stars emerge, the same stars that emerged last night and the night before and the night before that, back through countless generations. The people of Eridu do not know how old their city is, not in numbered years. But they know it has always been here, since the time of the Anunnaki themselves. This is sacred ground, where heaven first touched earth, where the first temple was built, where the pattern for all civilization was established. You stand once more in the center of the settlement, feeling the peace of another day ending. Tomorrow will bring more work, more rituals, more stories carved into clay. The priests will continue their study of the sacred texts. The scribes will train new students. The farmers will tend their fields. The craftspeople their workshops. The families their homes. And through it all, the presence of the Anunnaki will pervade everything, not as distant, abstract concepts, but as living realities, as real as the sun and the rivers and the grain in the fields, the gods who came from heaven to earth, the gods who created humans and taught them civilization, the gods who must be fed and honored and obeyed, the gods who, according to the tablets, once walked openly among mortals before withdrawing to a more distant relationship, governing through priests and kings rather than direct presence. The tablets speak of a time when the boundaries between divine and human were more permeable, when gods could take mortal lovers and produce hybrid offspring, when heroes could journey to heaven and return with gifts of knowledge, when the decisions made in the divine assembly directly and immediately affected human affairs. That age, according to the myths, is passing or has already passed. The gods are withdrawing, becoming more remote. But they have left behind their teachings, their laws, their stories. And they have left behind the temples, physical anchors for divine presence, places where communication between worlds remains possible. The night deepens, the lamps in the temple burn low, the settlement falls quiet. And in the scribal school, in the library of tablets, the accumulated wisdom of generations waits. Stories of how the world was made, how humans came to be, how civilization was established, the names and deeds of the Anunnaki, preserved in wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay. These tablets will survive, through conquest and collapse, through the rise and fall of empires, through millennia of sand and silence. They will be buried and forgotten, and then, impossibly, rediscovered. They will be excavated by people from distant lands and distant times. They will be deciphered, translated, studied, debated. and the stories they contain will speak again. The voices of ancient Sumer will be heard once more. The Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, will be remembered and wondered about and interpreted in ways the original authors could never have imagined. But that is far in the future. For now, in this moment, in this place, the stories are living tradition. They are the truth by which people organize their lives. They are the foundation of meaning, the explanation for existence, the connection between the visible and invisible worlds. Sleep comes easily in ancient Eridu. The darkness is complete, unbroken by any light save the stars and the moon. The air cools, the earth releases the day's accumulated heat, and in that peaceful darkness, surrounded by the sleeping city, you rest, dreaming perhaps of beings who descended from the heavens, who shaped humanity's destiny, who left behind mysteries that echo through time. The centuries pass like water flowing through the ancient canals. Empires rise from the dust of Mesopotamia. The Akkadians come, imposing their Semitic language over the Sumerian tongue, yet adopting and adapting the stories of the Anunnaki. King Sargon unites the city-states under his rule, creating the world's first true empire. But the myths persist, copied and recopied, translated and transformed, yet fundamentally unchanged in their essential meanings. The Babylonians emerge, building their great city with its ziggurat reaching toward heaven. They elevate Marduk to supreme kingship among the gods, rewriting the creation epic to place him at the center. Yet the other Anunnaki remain, their roles adapted, but their presence undiminished. Anu still rules the highest heaven. Enlil still commands the wind and storm. Enki still dwells in the watery depths, dispensing wisdom. The Assyrians conquer with unprecedented brutality, creating an empire that stretches from Egypt to Persia. Their scribes meticulously copy the old texts, preserving them in vast palace libraries. King Ashurbanipal, one of the few literate monarchs of the ancient world, collects tablets from across his realm, gathering them in Nineveh, creating perhaps the first systematic library in human history. Among the thousands of tablets stored, there are multiple copies of the Anunnaki myths, creation stories, flood narratives, lists of divine names and attributes. Then comes collapse. The Assyrian Empire falls to a coalition of enemies. Babylon rises again briefly under Nebuchadnezzar, who builds the famous Hanging Gardens and carries the Jews into captivity. But the Persians conquer Babylon. The Greeks come with Alexander, imposing Hellenistic culture. The Parthians follow, then the Sassanids. Islam sweeps across the region, transforming language, religion, and culture. The old gods are forgotten. The temples crumble. The tablets are buried beneath centuries of accumulated earth and debris. For more than 1,000 years, Mesopotamian civilization vanishes from human memory. The very script in which its stories were written becomes unknown. Travelers passing through Iraq see only mysterious mounds rising from the desert, telltale signs of ancient habitation. but no one can read the secrets buried within. Let us move forward now to a different time, a different world. The year is 1843 of the Common Era. The place is northern Iraq, near the modern city of Mosul. The Ottoman Empire rules this territory, but European powers are increasingly interested in the region's ancient past. A young French diplomat named Paul-Émile Botta arrives, officially to serve as consul in Mosul, but privately obsessed with archaeology. He has heard stories of vast mounds concealing ancient ruins. Local people sometimes find bricks inscribed with strange symbols, figurines of unknown origin, fragments of a forgotten world. Botta begins excavating at a site called Khorsabad. The work is difficult, conducted without modern equipment or methodology. Workers dig with picks and shovels, moving earth basket by basket. The heat is oppressive. Dust covers everything. Funding is limited. The Ottoman authorities are suspicious, but Botta persists. And then success. His workers uncover walls, massive stone slabs carved with reliefs depicting bearded kings, winged bulls with human heads, processions of tribute-bearers and warriors. This is the palace of Sargon II, the Assyrian king who ruled in the 8th century before the Common Era. The discovery electrifies European scholars. This is physical evidence of civilizations mentioned in the Bible, proof that these ancient empires truly existed. But more remarkable than the carvings are the tablets. Thousands of them, inscribed with that strange wedge-shaped script. Botta carefully packs them for shipment to France, where they will be studied by scholars, attempting to decipher this lost writing system. A British archaeologist, Austen Henry Layard, begins competing excavations nearby. He uncovers Nimrud and then Nineveh itself, finding Ashurbanipal's library with its vast collection of tablets. 20,000 tablets, perhaps more, covering every aspect of ancient life. Administrative records, literary texts, astronomical observations, medical treatises, magical incantations, mathematical tables, and most significantly for our story, mythological narratives. The tablets are shipped to the British Museum in London. They are catalogued, cleaned, studied, but no one can read them. The script is unlike anything in the known world. It is not alphabetic like Greek or Latin. It appears to be some combination of syllabic and logographic elements, impossibly complex. Multiple scholars work on the problem. They have one advantage: multilingual inscriptions, particularly those left by Persian kings like Darius, who recorded their achievements in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. By comparing these parallel texts, by identifying proper names that appear in all three languages, by painstaking analysis of sign frequency and pattern, the code slowly yields. The breakthrough comes in the 1850s. Henry Rawlinson, a British Army officer and amateur scholar, succeeds in deciphering the Old Persian portion of the Behistun inscription, a massive text carved into a cliff face in western Iran. From Old Persian, he moves to Babylonian, identifying signs and sounds, building a syllabary. Other scholars contribute. George Smith, a banknote engraver turned Assyriologist, possesses an almost supernatural ability to read fragmentary texts, to reconstruct broken tablets from scattered pieces. He works tirelessly in the British Museum's basement, surrounded by tablets covered in dust. And then, In 1872, George Smith makes an announcement that astounds the Victorian world. He has been reading tablets from Ashurbanipal's library, working through a long narrative text. And in this text, written in cuneiform, he finds a detailed flood story. A righteous man warned by the gods. Instructions to build a boat. Animals brought aboard. Rain falling for days. The entire world covered with water. The boat grounding on a mountain. Birds sent out to search for dry land. A sacrifice offered to the grateful gods. The parallels with the biblical flood narrative are unmistakable. But this text is older, much older. It predates the Hebrew Bible by more than 1,000 years. This is the Mesopotamian origin of a story that would become central to Jewish, Christian, and Islamic tradition. The man in the Mesopotamian version is named Utnapishtim, and the god who warns him is Ea, the Akkadian name for Enki. The story is part of a larger epic focused on a hero named Gilgamesh, a legendary king of Uruk who searches for immortality. In his quest, Gilgamesh seeks out Utnapishtim, the flood survivor who was granted eternal life by the gods, hoping to learn the secret of immortality.